Some may find the following disturbing. Discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of GTF. Gabriel Talks Football. My name is Aldo Gandia, and just before we start, a reminder that we have exclusive scouting reports for Bears fans at patreon.com/barroom draft. Greg has about 100 draft reports already posted. Danny Shimon has about 50, and so there's plenty of material to look through. We'll be adding a few more before we pull the plug and have them all listed. It's only $10 for the rest of the month and into May, so it's a good investment. If you go to the magazine shop and you get one of those draft magazines, you don't need to do that because we've got you covered here with video reports from Greg Gabriel and Danny Shimon. Let me bring in the man now. Hopefully I get his name right. Greg Gabriel, how are you?
You're having a tough time talking today, man.
I am. Didn't get much.
So I got a question for you.
Uh-huh.
The lead into this thing, you got that some things may be disturbing.
Yes.
And you got, a picture of the Chicago River. So
I know what you're going.
Is the Chicago River really that shitty that it's disturbing or what?
Well, have you been to downtown Chicago lately?
Well, I haven't been to downtown in a long time, but after what's been going on over the weekend, I don't know if I want to.
Yeah, exactly. It was just an image to put up there, but metaphorically or subliminally, it might be making a comment about what's going on in the city of Chicago with the violence in downtown Chicago, where millions of tourists come every summer, and it's just becoming unacceptable. And hopefully the new mayor will do something. Don't hold your breath, according to many.
That's right. I mean, this guy's going to be as bad as Lori, if not worse. But, I know we don't want to talk politics, but how about this? It just cracked me up. This guy gets elected on the runoff, and like the next day takes credit for Chicago getting the Democratic National Convention. Give me a freaking break. He had nothing to do with it. That was done before the election.
Absolutely. Those things take months to negotiate.
And maybe even years.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It had nothing to do with this clown.
Exactly. Well, hopefully he's not a clown. I'm pulling for him. He's got some, in my mind, some good ideas, but it's execution is the key part of it. But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, they all have good ideas until they actually sit in the seat.
Exactly. And then reality hits them in the face, and you can't do that. Well, what do you mean I can't do that? Hi, Andre Velasquez is in. How you doing, Papi? And we got quite a following already in the bar room, approaching 75 people. Dozens more already on Twitter. Thank you all very much. And a handful on Facebook. Thank you all very much for joining us live. We've got a really entertaining show ahead and mostly informative. Besides Greg giving us some of his top prospects, he wanted to share with us some of the strategy that goes into preparing for the draft and being ready for any scenario that hits the wall. I'm going to turn it over to you, Greg. Tell us what happens at about this time. What are they doing over at Hallis Hall and at 31 other GM offices around the nation?
Well, today at Hallis Hall, the veterans came in for the opening of the off-season program. So they're probably preoccupied with a lot of that, at least this morning, saying hello to everybody. Dante Pettis got re-signed this morning. That didn't surprise me. You might see one or two other veterans from last year who were out of contract be brought back, but that remains to be seen. But as far as going upstairs and in meetings, they'll be finishing up. Now, I'm not speaking exactly for the Bears here, but most teams in the league, finishing up, putting the finishing touches on their board the first part of this week. And then you get into part B or part two, if you want to call it that, and that's putting together a strategy for the draft. You know, so many people think they're watching the draft and they think decisions are made when the team's on the clock, and that is so far from being inaccurate. They're made well beforehand, and they're well thought of, whether it's to trade up, to trade down, who they're going to take, you know, and you piece this all together, and that's what you're going to be doing the last part of this week, the first part of next week. And also next week, you're going to be looking into trying to get as much info as far as intelligence on what other teams may or may not be doing, and potential trade talks. You start getting serious about potential trade talks next week. But getting into strategy, you've got to be prepared for all the different scenarios. And so right now, as it sits, the Bears are picking at 9, and they will probably, you know, have their board set, and they'll go, okay, if you stay at 9 and player A is there, this is the guy we're taking, and they'll make that determination. And then they'll have, if he's gone, we go to player B, and if he's gone, we go to player C. And you have that prioritized. And then your next step is, okay, well, do we want to trade up to get player A? I don't see Ryan Poles as a trade up guy. I see him as a trade down guy. He wants to collect capital, not get rid of it. And the other option, obviously, is trade down. Personally, I think that's what they may do, but it depends who they're looking at. And the only reason I say that is because when you look at the gap, they're picking at 9, and then their next pick isn't, even though they got 2 second-round picks, are not until the bottom third of the second round. So it's 53 and 61. So a lot of good players are going to come off of that top half of the first round. It'd be really nice if they could trade down and be able to move in to the top part of the second round, because in my opinion, that's a strong point of this draft. There are some really strong players in that top part of the second round, say the first 10, 12 picks, and guys who are going to step in right away and be starters and be good football players for this team. So, and so you look at that, and then you also look at, like, having discussions, you know, on Twitter yesterday. Some guy goes, "Oh, they can't trade down to 17. That's too far." Well, you don't look at just what people fail to look at. And here's what's going to happen. You know it as well as I do. You only have round 1 on Thursday night. So whatever happens, there are going to be, what, 9 million people in metropolitan Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
3 million pissed. And no matter what it is. And, you know, let's say Jalen Carter's there, they take Jalen Carter. Oh, they'll take, he's a bum. Why they take him? He's going to bust. All sorts of stuff like that. Or if they take, you know, Carter's gone and they take Paris Johnson. Well, guy from Georgia was better, Broderick Jones. Why didn't they take him? Or why didn't they take a wide receiver? You know, JSN, they should have taken him. He's the guy. You know, you know how it works. And,
absolutely.
You know, people are unhappy. But in the draft room at Hallis Hall, they've already got this thing worked out, exactly what they're going to do. And what fans got to understand is they got to look at the big picture. Don't look at just the draft or the first pick at number 9, or if they trade down. And there's been a lot of rumors, and Peter King in his Football Morning in America column today, he alluded to it also, that he's like the 4th person now that said Pittsburgh's interested in the Bears pick. I've heard before it was for an offensive lineman. Peter said it's for Jalen Carter. Personally, I don't think Carter's going to be there. I think Carter goes in the first 6 or 7 picks. But in fact, that whole article was very, like all Peter's columns, it was very interesting and well written. But, you know, he had a conversation with Drew Rosenhaus, and I think these visits that Jalen Carter has made have really done him a favor. as far as showing these teams who Jalen Carter is. From what I understand, from what some people have told me, what's been out there about the incident after the national championship party and what really happened are two different things. Even though, yes, he did plead no contest. He was part of the situation. He was at fault for some things, but might not have been as bad as some people are trying to make it out to be. And frankly, none of us really know. So, but anyway, when you trade down, and I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself here, you got to look at the entire package. Jerry and I used to do this all the time. We'd say, okay, if we stay at number one, we're taking this guy. We put that guy's card on the grease board, or write his name on the grease board. Well, what if we trade down? What are we looking at? Well, how far are we going? And you say, okay, let's say we're going here, certain spot. And then you go, who can we get there? And so now you got player B and player C that you can get with the trade down because of the picks you're going to pick up or whatever. And now you got to look at that entire package. So the answer really, if they do trade down, is not going to be until sometime Friday night during day 2 of the draft. So, and then you look at that package. Okay, we traded down. Let's just say this Pittsburgh thing does happen. So it's 17. Well, we're not going to get as good a player at 17 as we could have got at 9. Granted, on paper, who the hell knows? A guy at 17 could be an all-pro. But you take that whole grouping of players, the player you take at 17, and then what you get for making that trade, and that's going to be a pretty good bundle. To me, and I wrote about this, it'll be out later today in Windy City. The ideal trade scenario for me, and on paper, actually, the Bears lose a little bit, but when you think about the value, it's a good deal. Pittsburgh has 2 2s. Number 32, which was originally the Bears, and then number 49. Right now, the Bears have 53 and 61. If you flip-flop those 2s, the Bears get Pittsburgh's 2s, Pittsburgh gets the Bears' 2s. In essence, it's a win for Pittsburgh because they're not losing a pick, but they're coming up to get a player they want in the first round. It's a win for the Bears. It's a huge win for the Bears because what they're going to get at 32 is so much better than what they would have gotten at 53. The same thing with 49. It's so much better than they would have gotten at 53 or 61. That's a huge win. Points-wise, the Bears lose by a little bit, but I'm not greedy. I'm looking at the value of the players. Who can I get and what they're going to do? So now, again, assuming that's going to happen, you could say, okay, here's my package. Let's say Wright from Tennessee is still there at 17. You can take him. And then you get a player at 32 that's going to be a real good player and a player at 49 that's going to be a real good player. You look at that package, those 3 players versus, say, Paris Johnson at number 9. Okay, what's your winning number, so to speak? Okay, where's the advantage? The advantage is on the trade down because your team is better. You've got better football players. Yeah, you might not, maybe Wright's not going to be as good as Paris Johnson. So what? If he's going to be a starter and be a winning starter for you, and you've got so many more, and the players you got in the top part of the second round, don't forget 32 is really the last pick in the first round. There's only 31 picks this year. So it's like you're going to get a guy in your first round. That is so much better than having to wait for 21 picks to come off the board before you pick in the second round.
So it's all about preparing for different scenarios. How many scenarios do you think they go through? I mean, do they go through 31 different scenarios? Because we got to account for potentially every team in the league giving us a call, something like that.
No, I mean, you're going to start. First of all, you're going to have a drop-off point. I only want to go so far.
Okay.
And you're looking at what they have to give. And if I'm the Bears, some people say, I'll get another first-round pick in the next year. Right now, I don't want another first-round pick next year. I want players that are going to help me this year. This year is important. Mm-hmm. So, and again, just sticking with Pittsburgh, because that's been the one that's out in public as a possible scenario. Pittsburgh can't make that trade. That's a 400-point move. Pittsburgh can't make that trade without giving up 32. Now, there's other ways. You don't necessarily have to give up 32 and 49. You can give up 32 and another pick somewhere, and then the Bears would have 61. But when I was thinking of it is Pittsburgh, they don't have a lot of picks. And doing it the way I said it, they hold on to the same number of picks. It's just they're picking later in the second round, yet they still got the player they wanted in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Curtis has a question. He says, the Patriots have a lot of picks. Haven't heard anything about potentially trading with them. And he's also a huge fan of DeJuan Jones. Why don't you tell him why DeJuan Jones will not be playing for the Chicago Bears?
If Matt Nagy was still the head coach and Juan Castillo was still the offensive line coach, you might want DeJuan Jones on the Chicago Bears. But in this scheme, and with Chris Morgan coaching the offensive line and what they ask the tackles to do, DeJuan Jones cannot play in this scheme. He cannot get out into space and pull and block in space. He's slow, he's stiff. You'd much rather, for the longest time, I was a little doubtful that even Wright could do that. But the more I watched, and I watched another 2 games. I've watched just about every game from the season. I watched 2 more last night. You don't see him do what the Bears ask their tackles to do because it's not part of their offense. But you see enough to know that he can do it. Now, at the combine, he weighed about 332. Knowing Jimmy Arthur the way I do, they're going to probably get him down to closer to 320. Decrease his body fat, increase his strength, and he'll be fine if that's the case. But you also got Anton Harrison. If they went to 17, you could take a tackle. It could be like one of those 2 guys, or they could take a defensive player, and with 32, come back and get a tackle. Matthew Bergeron could be there from Syracuse. You could have Jalen Duncan from Maryland could be there, but I'm throwing out names, but it doesn't matter what names I throw out. It's what the bird look it is.
Missed the last sentence of what you said there because there was a little hiccup in the Wi-Fi. Can you repeat that last sentence to wrap up that thought, please? Oh, you're frozen again. Either that or you're drinking a lot of water. There you go.
Yeah, I said it doesn't matter what names I throw out because it really matters how the Bears have their board set up, and they're going to draft accordingly. Now, I know about where guys are going to be ranked, but what the grade is going. What their grade is on the board, and you don't want to drop down in level of grade. I have no idea what that is for them. Only they know that. It's easy to guess who the first 17, 18 players are going to be in the draft are going to be. It's not easy to guess in what order because, number one, everybody's board's different. And, how they are ranked on particular boards is going to change from team to team. So where you could get the names right, how they're valued is going to be totally different from team to team and from analyst to analyst.
There are several DeJuan Jones fans in the chat room, and I saw him firsthand at the Senior Bowl, and he moved really well for a guy that's 6'8", 360 pounds. But what do you say to people who see some tape and they see him moving around? Isn't it still a risk to draft someone that large, because the wear and asking him to move so frequently is just going to be a wear and tear, and you're not quite sure how a behemoth like that is going to withstand all that athleticism?
Well, number one, you never see him do what they ask the Bears tackles to do.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, you saw Braxton Jones do it last year. You didn't see it as much on the right side because they weren't capable of doing it. Larry Borum couldn't do it. Riley Reef couldn't do it. They're not athletic enough to do, really to run that scheme the way they want to run that scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they want to do it is get those guys out in space. Put San Francisco on and then and see what they asked McGlinchey to do. And that's what you want. Or put Green Bay on when they're healthy, and you'll see how they want to use the tackles in that scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that DeJuan Jones is not a good football player. I'm saying he's not a fit. And so you're not going to take a player that's not a fit, and you're not going to change the scheme. You brought in Luke Getsy because of the scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not going to have him change his scheme for one football player. And yeah, he might go on to be a Pro Bowl player. So what? He's going to be a Pro Bowl player. And I'll go back, the conversation I had with Ryan Poles at the East West. And we were talking about free agents and some offensive tackles. And I brought up one name. And right away, and I don't want to mention the name, but right away he said, not a scheme fit. I wouldn't touch him. And so you know what he's looking at. Because I know who the player was. I know how that player moves. And that's all I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you got to find the guys with the right amount of athleticism. And there's a bunch that can do it, but then there's a drop-off. And so you got to do it early. Paris Johnson can do it. Roderick Jones can do it. Wright can do it. Bergeron can do it. Duncan can do it. Okay, then you get some other guys and it's I don't know. I'm not sure. They might be good football players, but are they what you want?
Right. I think I've got loaded on my computer here the clip of you talking about the traits of offensive linemen. I want to play that. Hopefully this is the right one. I want to play that because there's still chatter in the chat room that I kind of disagree. This is not just simply about drafting a big, good offensive lineman. There are special things that are being asked. And I think if this is the right clip, Greg explains it perfectly.
See who made up the offensive line this year. They're all athletic. And why are they athletic? Because like the tackles got to pull a lot. They got to get out in space. They got to adjust on the move, be able to hit a moving target, break down in the open space and hit a moving target. So you're not going to get these unless the guy's a freak and he's really a rare athlete for being so big. You're not going to get these 330, 335 pound guys. You're going to get guys that are usually in the 3 teens, maybe 322, 323. But it a lot of it depends on their athleticism. So you have to pay attention to not only the 40, but with linemen, really what's important is the 10-yard speed. But then you look at the 20-yard shuttle and the 3-cone. And obviously you want to look for some explosiveness. So that's where the standing long jump and the vertical jump come into play.
I think the key there is that clip of Braxton Jones getting into the end zone and looking for that defensive back and getting to him and getting him out of the way so that the play can become a touchdown.
You can put on every Bears game from last year and you can see Braxton Jones getting out in space and making a block. And not just getting out in space, but making the block, adjusting on the move. And a lot of times, you got to hit an athletic outside linebacker or a defensive back So the defensive back, he's 100 pounds less than Braxton is, maybe more. Yet he's still got the athleticism and the body control to be able to hit that guy in space. And that's what's important. So that's why, look, I get it. People say, oh, I want a good football player. Okay, yeah. Dwan Jones is a good football player. I'm repeating myself. I'm not saying he's not. What I am saying is he can't play in this scheme. Just like Orlando Brown couldn't play in this scheme. That's why they didn't go after him. And Orlando Brown's probably a better athlete than Dwan Jones.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody posted that clip of Orlando Brown running, and it was laughable. He's a good player, but he could definitely not do what Braxton
and what
Jones did.
In free agency, Aldo, after the first couple of days of free agency, and people asked Ryan at the presser, why didn't you go after Orlando Brown? He goes, well, scheme fit's really important here. There's your answer. Why do people want to sit and argue with the guy? You write up profiles for each position.
Right.
Okay. And you look for players that fit the profile. And I don't want to hear, well, no, you don't say no to a good football player because he doesn't fit the profile. That's bullshit.
Yeah.
25 years ago, maybe that was the case. Everything in this league right now is centered around scheme and scheme fit. And there's not a team in the league that doesn't do it.
There you go. I think there's still going to be people disagreeing with that, but it unfortunately, I mean, that is the reality. And there's going to be a lot of players bypassed by this general manager in the NFL draft. I shouldn't say a lot of players, but there's going to be a handful of players that are bypassed, guys that we saw their tape, we saw their games, we saw their highlights. And man, I really, really want that player with the Bears, but they're just not going to fit what Eberflus and Poles and the rest of the coaches are trying to accomplish.
Well, I'm going to say one more thing, and then we'll go on to something else.
Okay.
Why do you think they signed Nate Davis? Because he's one of the more athletic guards in the league.
Yep.
And he fits the profile. And so that's what you're doing. That's how you build a team. And you go back to when Flus was putting together a staff. You interviewed a few different people for the offensive coordinator position. He chose Getsy, and he told you why he chose him. He said, that was a tough scheme for me to coach against. I wanted to use that scheme. That was my plan when I got this job, was I wanted to run that offensive scheme because I know how difficult it is to defense. Mm-hmm. So are you going to change that scheme, the philosophy of the scheme, for one player? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not. The famous Bill Parcells quote, you start drafting exceptions and then you've got a team full of exceptions.
And you lose.
Yeah. And that's really, I mean, the more and more I think about that quote.
It's a real simple comment. And
it's so deep. I mean, we've seen that in Chicago for so long. It's the previous regime with Ryan Pace. I believe that he did that. There were exceptions made, but we won't get into that. Let's talk.
I'll tell you, there's one other thing I want to throw out, and that's best player available.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest myth in the National Football League. And here's why. And we've said this numerous times. Every board is different. And you could say, let's say you're picking 21st, just hypothetically.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 32 boards in the National Football League. You've got Mel Kiper's board. You got Daniel Jeremiah's board and a few other national analysts. Their 21st player is going to be different on almost every one of those boards. I guarantee you, out of those 30, say 35 boards, there'll be 20 different names at the 21st spot on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And so best available player according to who? According to Kiper. See, one thing the analysts don't do is they don't take into consideration, because they can't, they don't have the time. They don't take into consideration scheme fit. They're doing more of a generic grading of the guy to play in the National Football League, which is fine. That's what their job is. But when you take scheme fit for team A versus team B versus team C, that changes. And so the guy that may be their best player may not even be on the board with some teams because he's not a scheme fit.
Not a scheme fit. Indeed. I mean, I think we've beat this topic down. Let's now talk about players who could be scheme fits. Let's talk about some of your favorite players in this upcoming draft. And let's start with the 3-tech position. You sent me a list of players. I've put some pictures to it. And here we go with number 1, 3-tech that you have on your board. It's Jalen Carter.
Well, I don't have a real board. I put them together, just slatting together quarter to grade. I don't line up. I put them in groups like I've always done. But Carter is the best three. Let's throw out all the issues and look at the talent, because the issues is totally separate from the talent. Okay, and a team makes the decision if they want to deal with the issues and if they're able to deal with the issues. But the problem is the issues often determine how the guys end up playing. But just looking at talent, Jalen Carter's head and shoulders above everybody else as far as being a 3 technique in this scheme and be able to, and having the ability to be able to dominate and play the position, correctly. He's not as explosive or as fast or as quick as a guy like Tommy Harris. He's a different kind of player, but he's so strong that, he can just throw guys out of the way, and he gets penetration on a consistent basis. Granted, they're downs when he just doesn't seem like he's totally on his A game, so to speak. But when he is, you can't block him. He is an unblockable guy. But I think a great player. My next 3. Do you want me to do it that way, or?
Yeah, but first let's answer this question.
Okay.
Renewable is concerned about the loss, and so how do you address that problem?
That's the issues, and that's one of the issues, and I don't have to determine that because that's what Flus's and Ryan Pohl's job is, and that's, I guarantee you, right? They've already answered the question to themselves. They already know if they want to take the guy or not, and if he's there, we're going to take him. So, and if they do, that it's not an issue with them, because if it was, then they wouldn't take him. They'd bypass him,
right? If
he was in fact there. So, if in fact he's there, I don't think he will be, but if in fact he is, they are satisfied that he could be the player they want him to be.
This next guy that you got at the 3-tech, your number 2, was actually a little bit of a surprise to me. Take it away. Keon White.
You're breaking up, buddy. Yeah, Keon White he's a real interesting guy. A lot of your good 3 techniques weren't 3 techniques in college. There were defensive ends, 5 techniques or whatever that they're converted, because you're looking at a special player to play the 3. He's got to be quick. He's got to be explosive. He's got to be a penetrator. He's got to be a disruptor. He's got to have interior pass rush ability. Keon White has all those things. He's a low percentage body fat, 6'5", 285 pounds, long arms, big hands, very productive, and inside, and he'll play. And you don't have to be in this scheme. You don't have to be 310 pounds to play in this scheme. The 3-tech, Tommy Harris was never more than 290 when he played here. 285 to 290 the entire career. And you look at the top 3s that played in this league: Warren Sapp, 285.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Harris, 285 to 290. You go back to John Randall, he was 275 pounds because he was the original 3.
Mm-hmm.
You got Booger McFarland, was about 290, 295. You don't have to be big, but you've got to have those other traits. You got to be strong. You got to be explosive. You got to penetrate. You got to disrupt. You got to be able to be an interior pass rusher. If you can't do those, you can't play the position.
Right. Got a question here from Victor De Jesus. He says he heard Rod Marinelli on the Score last week, and he said that he likes to look at broad jump as an indicator of the explosion needed specifically for the 3 tech. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's the broad jump and the vertical jump.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all lower body explosiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Always look at that. I look at the 3 cone because it's quick change of direction.
Right.
And now the 3 cone and the 20 shuttle, granted, those are learned drills. They practice them so much they better get a high score. But still, if you get a real fast time in those things, you can practice the drill, but you can't practice the flexibility. You either got it or you don't got it.
Right.
You know, so but the same thing with explosiveness is if you got the ability to, a big 290-pound guy and he can vertical over 30 inches and he gets 9.5, 9.6, 9.7 in a standing long jump, that's an explosive dude.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, Creighton has a question. How have the athletes changed the way you scout? They've become bigger and stronger. So from when you started your first years, when you were over at the scouting for the Giants, what has changed in terms of the athleticism of players? And has that changed the way you scout at all?
No, you're still looking for productivity. You just, when I came into the league, a good size offensive tackle was 275 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he's a reject now. He can't play. But it's all relative. I mean, we went to the Super Bowl in 1986, January 87 Super Bowl, and won it. And our biggest offensive lineman was under 275 pounds. They were all – in fact, I saw a thing on the NFL Network. It was called Jersey Guys or something like that. It was on about 2 weeks ago, and it was about the Giants in those Parcells years. And they had flashbacks, and they had the whole group of offensive linemen except for William Roberts at the end. And Roberts wasn't there for that first Super Bowl. He was there at the second one. And all these guys, hell, they're younger than I am. They're in their late 50s or early 60s. Most of them can't even walk anymore. I mean, because they beat the hell. And they're so small. It's like Jay Hilgenberg. And I don't know if you've seen Jay Hilgenberg. Jay Hilgenberg played at around 290, 295. He's about $175 right now.
Yeah.
He looks like I do.
What are you weighing now, Greg? I know you lost.
Hey, I gained back some. I was 166 yesterday. I got to go up about another 10, and I'll be happy.
Good for you. Good for you. All right, let's get back to our 3 techs. Number 3 on your list of 3 techs is the kid from Northwestern, Adetomiwa Adebawore. I think I got it.
No, it's Adebawore Adetomiwa, isn't it? Isn't it the other way around? Yeah,
you got it. No, it's his first name is Adetomiwa.
Okay,
and his last name. Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. Aid. Played inside and outside. This guy, at the end of the day, might be the best of all of them. His traits are rare. 4.49. And his jumps are like crazy good. He's got just under 34-inch arms. He's real strong. He did, I think he did 26 or 27 reps at the combine. And then he didn't have to do it at Northwestern, but he did it anyway. And he did 1 or 2 more reps. And, his change of direction, he really came on, he's playing outside for Northwestern. He's not an outside player. He's an inside player. There's some games where he lined up more inside. The Nebraska game is one of them, and he dominated when he was playing inside. But he got down to the Senior Bowl, and, first you look at the one-on-ones. I think he did 12 one-on-one reps. He didn't lose one. I have never seen that happen. Never. And I started going to the Senior Bowl in 1984. And just his overall play was very, very good. He's very, very explosive. I'll tell you, if the Bears did that trade with Pittsburgh and he was there at 32, it took me about a second and a half to get the name on the card. Because I think this guy's going to be a hell of a football player.
Wow, that's a great endorsement. And, I've seen a number of interviews with him. He seems like he is a team first player, really bright. I like the person. I like the player. But it is a little concerning that there isn't a lot of tape with good results. Understandably, he was playing out of position for 50, 60% of his snaps. So how do you, scouting is all about prognosticating. How do you look forward and see this guy as your 3 tech?
Traits. He's got, when you compare him physically with the guys who have been the best 3s in this league, he's got the same traits.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, let us move on now. I think you've got a 4th 3 tech, and
no, not a 4th 3 tech. I got some 1s.
Yep. Okay, so let's go over to the that 1 tech, and the first one.
No tackle, 1 tackle. Yeah, Brian Broussais, and some people say he's a 3. I don't see him as a 3 because he's not explosive. And he didn't play the 3 at Clemson. He played the 1, and he played on the nose. Good football player. Could you get away with him playing the 3? Yeah, but you always want better. You want a better athlete. But I think he goes bottom part of the first round, after 20, somewhere after 20. He's going to be a good player. He's young. Played with a heavy heart this year, and that had to affect him. He missed 3 or 4 games. His younger sister died. She had cancer, had to weigh really hard on him. But this he's a football player. And he, from the end of the season to the combine, he drops the weight. I thought he looked a little chubby during the year. He looked a lot better at the combine. The question, when you see that happen, the question you want to ask yourself, okay, well, what am I going to get if I buy him? If I draft him, okay, am I going to get, the chubby guy I saw on tape, or I'm going to get the guy that got off the combine? Well, again, if he came here and knowing Jimmy Arthur, he's going to be the guy you saw at the combine, or even better than the guy you saw at the combine, or otherwise it's going to cost him money because it's going to get fined for not meeting the body percentage or body percentage goal or the weight goal. It's either or. You could be, let's say they give you a set weight of, let's say, even 300. Okay, and you're supposed to be 18% body fat, for a defensive tackle. And I'm just, throwing a dart at the wall for those numbers. If you come in at 304, but your body fat is within the right area, then you're good, because it's all about body fat. So just to explain that.
Here's another guy. And it's speaking of body fat, what was the point that Olin Kreutz made last season? He was concerned about asking players to reduce weight because they might get weaker, and that it had to be kind of a coordinated, thing with nutrition experts and so forth.
Yeah, you can't just drop weight. You got to drop fat.
Right. And
gain muscle.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Here's another guy, Broussais, I guess, is every time you hear him in an interview, you really start cheering for the guy because of the situation. He lost his sister last year. He tore his ACL in 2021. He had some other health issues. He's a guy you want to root for, but Nomad and Danny Shimon, for instance, thinks this kid from Clemson is a second or even in Danny's eyes, maybe even a third round talent. What do you say to people who have him ranked so low?
Everybody's entitled to their opinion.
Even if they're wrong?
No,
I'm
everything
just
I
kidding.
hear, I like the guy, and when healthy, he's been really good, really disruptive. Like I said, I thought he played a little heavy this past year, and obviously we already went over why. But everything I hear talking to people is that he's going to be, that lower third of the first round type player. Now, if he goes 36, is that going to surprise me? No, because you get in that group like
Marvin Mims, Oklahoma.
Oops.
What'd you do?
I pressed the wrong button. I got a twitchy finger. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. We're not talking receivers now, although just so you know, you get that right.
Okay.
Even though Marvin Mims is pretty good, we're
Okay.
but yeah, that's fine. Danny knows what he's looking at, and he's entitled to his opinion. I think he goes at the bottom of the first. If he goes at the top of the second, it's still the same area.
Yeah, I agree. My man has been asking for weeks about Lucas Van Ness. Why doesn't Greg bring up Lucas Van Ness? What does he have against Lucas Van Ness? I'll turn it over to you. What's going on with your evaluation of?
I like him. I don't like him as much as many of the analysts do. And from what I understand, he's not going to go as high as what a lot of the analysts. Early on, the analysts had him going in the top 15.
Yeah,
I'm hearing he's more, in that same range with Brian Bracey, or I don't know how the hell you say his name, but he's a guy that's going to go after 20. I like him. I don't love him. I think that if it's me and I took this guy, I'd put 20 pounds on him and put him at the 3. I think just the way he plays, and he plays with like a reckless abandon. And I don't want to, I get it. He's a local favorite, and I don't want to bang him because he is a local favorite. I'm not banging him. I'm just trying to line him up the way I see him. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But, talking to people around the league, I try to get what their opinions are too. And, he's still raw. And Iowa can play it any way they want to play it. The guy didn't start. And you can say that, well, they start seniors. Well, I guarantee if you go through that, the 22 guys starting, they all aren't seniors. So that there's a little hidden something there. Guy's going to be a good football player. Like I say, he was 260 something at the combine. I'd get him up to 285, 290 and play him inside at the 3 because of the style that he plays. He's a right defensive end. But he's a good player. I just like other guys better.
C Sharp, who is a fan of Van Ness, says he manhandled Skoronski and Paris Johnson, and he had the most snaps of any of the defensive linemen over at Iowa. So the starting thing might be overplayed. Your thoughts?
It could be or it couldn't be, but I've always come from the school that you start the best guys. So, I don't dislike him. I don't like him as much as some other people. I don't think he's a top 15 player. If he goes in the top 15, fine. We'll see. And you know what? It gets down to this. I don't care if he goes 5th, 25th, or 35th. It's how he ends up playing once he gets in the league. And that's going to determine if he was overdrafted or underdrafted or drafted right about at the right spot.
Yeah, somebody's going to fall in love with him in this league. So where do you see him playing? Did you say?
I personally would play him at the 3, or he's a left defensive end. And really, you can probably flip-flop him. you know, a little bit, you know, have a guy that's capable of, you know, has the versatility to play two positions in this scheme.
Okay. All right, let's get back to that nose tackle position. The next guy on your list is
I got really no particular order, but the kid from Wisconsin, Benton. And some people think he's a 3. He's not a 3. He's a nose, or a 1 technique, and he's a pretty good one. Yes, he showed pretty good explosion at the Senior Bowl, but you know, you go back and look what you see on tape during the season. He's a good football player. He's a good fit for this scheme. You know, his 40 time, just over 5 flat, is 10.174. Everything, he checks the boxes. I like the player. Does he go in the first? Maybe. You know, the bottom part of the first, probably. You know, he's in that group, that 20 to 40 group, where, you know, it could be anybody. You know, you get a bunch of players that could go into that last 10, 12 spots of the first round. So I like him, and there's a lot to like about him playing that 1. And he played, and you know, they signed the guy with the Raiders last year, and he's going to be the starter, and he is an idea. He is an ideal guy. Yes, and you know, very, very similar to people we've had play that position before, and so I think he's going to be a good player. But you want to go into the game with, you know, dressing 7 or 8 defensive linemen, and all of them are playing. You're rotating them. So if you have 7, that means there's a guy that has versatility to play more than one position. And you keep rotating him in and out. And the reason for that is you always have fresh guys in there.
Then this guy at the Senior Bowl, he showed the quickness to me, my untrained eyes, that he can potentially play some 3 tech for you.
You know, to me, it's like the kid from Clemson. You can play him there a little bit. You can get away with him there a little bit, but he's not exactly what you want. You know, you want the ideal guys you want. Think Tommy Harris, Warren Sapp, Tank Johnson, Henry Melton. Those are the types of guys you want to play the 3 and go way back to John Randall, you know, and who was outstanding. But, you know, so, and that's not what, you know, Benton, Billings, you know, they're more like Spice Adams. And, you know, they got to be penetrators and disruptive, but they got to be able to take on people. They're not shooting the gap like the 3 technique guy is.
Right.
You know, that's a guy that's got to be able to hold the fort a little bit better. And he's got the girth, the size, and the strength to do that.
The next guy that you have at this position is the kid from Missouri, Mozzie Smith. Or Michigan, excuse me. You just called me with him a little while ago, so this is the graphic I came up with. Tell me why you like him.
Well, I watched more tape last night, again this morning, and for a big guy, normally, you know, at 323, that's not a guy you gravitate towards in this defense because they generally just don't move well enough. But this guy does move pretty damn good. You know, he's quick in a short area. He can change direction. He stays on his feet. He uses his hands. He gets penetration. He can 2-gap, which you don't need to do in this defense, but he can do it, which means he's stout and strong. He's got some ability to anchor. But he's also got the ability to slip box and get penetration. So is he a perfect fit? No, but he's a guy that I think could be a pretty good player within this scheme.
He's a second rounder, right?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
All right. Okay, let's move to a different position. Let us go to the offensive tackle position. You want to start with Broderick Jones. I won't say he's your number one, but he's the number one on the list you sent me.
I got Broderick and Paris Johnson pretty similar. I think Broderick's a better athlete.
Mm-hmm.
If the Bears were to draft Broderick, I think they'd keep him on the left side and move Braxton Jones, and you'd have two BR Jones on the at the tackle position. Mm-hmm. Now, how they're going to put that, you might have to put BRA and BRO Jones on the back of their shirts. Mm-hmm. But he's very, very athletic. He is a nasty prick now. You know, he plays a very nasty, aggressive game. He doesn't have as many games under his belt. He was a third-year sophomore, redshirted as a freshman, played a few games, but you can do that and still redshirt. Then he started the second half of the 2021 season and all of 2022 for Georgia, where Paris started all of 2021 and all of 2022. But Broderick, in my mind, he did play some right tackle as a redshirt freshman, got some game time at right tackle as a redshirt freshman, but very few snaps. So he can play the right side, but I think he's a natural left, and you'd move Braxton over, and you'd have two really, really athletic tackles. Then Paris, and let me tell you, the difference between the two is minimal. Different kinds of players. Paris isn't quite as athletic. He's bigger, he's a little bit longer. Now he has played. He played 3 years at Ohio State. His first 2 years, because they had tackles, and he was a good player, and they wanted to get him on the field, so he played guard. So he was a backup guard as a freshman in 2020. And then in 21, he's a starter, starts every game at right guard. And then this year they move him. You know, Petit Ferrer was the left tackle a year ago. He graduates. They move this guy over to the left tackle. So he's got versatility in that he can play guard and tackle. He's played on the left side, but he started a full season on the right side. There's no question. You already know he can play on the right side. Mm-hmm. And he is very good run blocker, very good pass blocker, got ideal tackle size. He's a good person. Football means a lot. He's good friends with the quarterback. You got a lot of things going for him.
Yeah. How much value do you put on that, Greg? The fact that he is friends with Justin Fields. They spent a lot of time together, played video games together. Is that important at all?
No. Not in the big scheme of things. No, not really. But you are gonna. I'll tell you what you do though. When you try to get straight answers. Mm-hmm. You know, when you got a guy on your team from a certain school and you're going to go into that school or you've been into that school, and you say, okay, tell me about so and so, and don't give me any bullshit. Tell me. Mm-hmm. You know, give me a real opinion. What do you think? You know, how are his work habits? Mm-hmm. How's he get along with the teammates and stuff? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get pretty straight answers.
Right.
You know, and so, yeah, that helps. That's just another source of trying to find out background on a player that you might be interested in.
Yeah. CJ Williams says if both, let's say Jones and Johnson both graded out the same, you like them both the same, would the fact that Johnson has a relationship with Justin, would that be the deciding factor perhaps?
No, I don't think so. I think Poles is going to take the guy he likes better.
Yeah. One he's going to spend all that money on.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to Darnell Wright is another offensive tackle of that. I've been hearing his name so much recently. Your thoughts?
Some people got him mocked at 9. He's never going at 9. That one would baffle me. He's a good player, and he came on the map because of the way he played against Will Anderson from Alabama. just shut Anderson down in that Tennessee upset of Alabama during the season. He has played on the left side, and 2021 he played on the left side, but he's been predominantly a right tackle. So a little bit too heavy right now at 333. Probably be a lot better in the Bears scheme at about 320. At first, I kept thinking, I just don't see this guy as being athletic enough in the run game to be exactly what they want. But the more I watch, the more I say, yeah, he's fine. I mean, if you compare, and I don't want to have Larry Borum being the whipping boy, but, he's 10 times the athlete Larry Borum is. He's 10 times the athlete that Riley Reif was. And the Bears had the best running game in the NFL last year with those guys playing. But what this guy can do is pass protect. Mm-hmm. He is a very, very good pass protector. He's got a strong punch. He's got quick feet for a big guy. He slides to the outside and recovers back to the inside versus counter moves really, really well. He plays with good bend. He anchors really well. I mean, you like everything about his game. Like I said, the only question I have is, what's he going to be like when you ask him to get out into space? And I think, if he drops 10 pounds, he's going to be absolutely fine. And like I said, he's better than anybody they had playing there last year at the position. And the running game was pretty darn good. And he's 10 times better as a pass blocker.
How much weight are you asking him to lose?
You had mute on for a second. I didn't hear the first thing you said.
How much weight are you asking him to lose?
Well, that's up to Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy's going to get him in the bod pot, and they may have already done that. They brought him in. Mm-hmm. They brought him in for a visit, and by the way, Wednesday's the last day you can have people visit. And last Thursday, so 4 days ago, was the day of the local workout. So who of were any of the big names there that could have come? The guys from Northwestern, Skoronski and Aid, guys like that, were they there? I don't know, because they didn't put out a list of who was there and who wasn't there. We used to open, when I was there, we opened it to the media. Obviously, they didn't. So, because you didn't hear anything about it, but it was last Thursday. But when he came in for a visit, I'm not saying they did this, but they could have done it. They could have put him in the bod pod, got his body fat, and said to him, if we take you, this is what your body fat is right now. This is where we want it to be when camp opens up. They're going to give him from now until, the end of July when camp opens up to reach that goal. This is where we want you to be. And this is the weight we want you to be at. And, perhaps get a jump on the thing because they brought him in, last week or the week before, whenever the hell it was. Now, did they do all this stuff? I have no idea. I'm just saying they could have, and it's totally within the rules to do that because you can put the guy in the bod pod and classify that as part of, when you bring a guy in, you have to do some sort of medical, and you can include that as being part of the medical.
Okay. All right, let's move on to Anton Harrison, one of my favorites in this draft.
Yeah, Harrison is, for lack of a better term, a poor man Roderick Jones. Very, very athletic, not quite as tall. He's 6'4" even, but he's got length to him, 34, just over 34-inch arms. Also a pretty nasty guy, great feet, real good pass blocker. He might be another guy that if you took him, and this guy's a trade down guy. This isn't the guy you're taking at 9. This is a guy, if you're trading down, and let's say Wright's not there or whatever, and you're dead set on getting a tackle, then this is a guy that would be in the equation. Excuse me. Now, where is he on the Bears board? I don't know. I think he's a legitimate first-round pick. Good football player. The first thing, and you probably remember this too, with the combine, when they came out with the heights and weights, they originally had his arms like 31 and a half inches, and everybody going, what? And then they quickly corrected it to 34 and an eighth. But another young player, underclassman coming out. As you can see, he's only 21 years old. And, if you traded back and you got this guy or you got right, I'm happy. Because then again, you look at, this guy can come in and play. He'd probably stay on the left side. I don't know if you'd put him on the right, keep him on the left and put Braxton over on the right side. That's my opinion, but, it's up to the coaches.
Indeed, it always is. All right, let's get to another offensive lineman that you like, and you have been preaching about this guy for quite some time, Matthew Bergeron.
Yeah, okay. I got him higher than a lot of the analysts do. This guy is excuse my language, but he's a prick. He's a nasty guy. French Canadian, probably played hockey when he was young. Grew up in French Canada, went to school up in Canada, then goes to Syracuse. Been, I think, a 3-year starter at Syracuse. Did play right tackle 1 year, the rest of the time at left tackle. Very athletic, nasty. He gets after people. I wouldn't keep him on the left. I'd put him on the right. Let Braxton stay on the left. Good player. I think he starts as a rookie and would be an obvious upgrade. To me, this is a guy you take not in the first round. This is a guy you take. Let's say if you take a defense, if you trade down, you take a defensive player, and then with that high 2 that you're getting back, this is a guy you'd consider with that high 2.
Yeah, he's impressive. There's no doubt about it. Let's move on now to one more offensive lineman. Frankly, I was a little surprised you included him on your list. Jalen Duncan from Maryland.
Well, I got a good friend there, and I made a call, and because he was a little down on the guy last summer when I had to do him for Michael, and he said he really came on this year, matured, played really, really well. He's a leader. This guy's played a lot of football. He plays on the left side of Maryland. He'd be on the right side here. Good football player. They brought him in, so there's some interest. But now, just speaking of that, I don't have all the names of the guys they brought in last year, but I think I got about 18, and they didn't draft any of them. So, now, that doesn't mean they weren't interested. It just means that of the names that I found, they didn't get any of them.
Yeah. That and sometimes it is a little subterfuge there, bringing in a guy, and sometimes you just want to get information from that player about somebody else on their team. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and some of it's smokescreen.
Yeah.
We've been known to do that when I was there. And like 1 year, we brought in a bunch of guys that we drafted. And then the next year, we purposely, and a lot of it was because the media was always checking and they brought in this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. So just to throw off the media, we wouldn't bring in certain guys that we were interested in. Just so there was no way of predicting who we really liked. There's no pattern, put it that way.
Unbelievable. The games that are played.
Yes.
All right,
you always play games.
Let's turn to the edge position. We got edge and some corners to do. So let's do Will Anderson. Tell me why you love this guy.
The guy's been a good football player for a long time. I mean, last year, productivity-wise, 2021, he was better than 2022. He had 18 and a half sacks. My good friend Teddy Monago works for the Rams, said last year he might have been the first pick in the draft as compared to the guy that went first. This guy's a good player. And for some reason, I saw it again, started seeing it again this morning. People, they always like to take shots at the guy on top. And so I've been seeing, yesterday I saw it and again today, that Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech may go above this guy. And don't be shocked if Houston takes. And by the way, Houston's not going to take a quarterback. From everything I hear, if Young goes number one, Houston's not taking Stroud.
Wow.
And so and that's been out for weeks now. There's a lot of people that don't want to believe it, but there's enough people that, and I've talked to 3 people. One is a Houston insider, and then 2 national guys, and they all believe that there is no way, unless the owner forces the issue. That's the only way it could end up. But they don't. And one of the reasons they don't want Stroud is Stroud's got the same agent as Deshaun Watson, and just dealing with a quarterback with the same agent, it's just they don't want to go there. In fact, if you read Peter King's article today, there's some people who think the guy who's going to have the little bit of not a free fall, but a fall is Stroud. And so that remains to be seen. Who knows? Yeah. It is Lion season, but I expect Young to go number 1, and then Houston to take either trade out or take Wilson or this guy. And there's some people that think that the guy with the better upside is Tyree Wilson. The better player today is Will Anderson. Well, that's probably up to opinion. You could probably talk to 15 different top evaluators, and you'd get 7 for one and 8 for the other. Who knows? They're close. But Tyree Wilson, he's your prototype. The only thing you don't see is, how come he didn't have more sacks? And I've said this before, you watch Texas Tech tape and you want to scream at the tape. You go, what the hell are they doing? This guy drops into coverage so much, and he's a premier pass rusher. And you go, why are they doing that? And not that he's bad in coverage, he's very fluid. But when you got a guy who can dominate a game as a pass rusher, why isn't he doing that 100% of the time? But he's got that prototypical height, weight, length. Who knows what he runs, because he didn't run coming off that broken foot. The one doctor who did the surgery came out and said he's fine. But history says when you have doctors put out statements, there might be something wrong. I want to make some calls, which I won't be making until the first part of next week. Now the rechecks, and if he went to he probably went to the recheck because he didn't work. The rechecks were just over the weekend, like Friday and Saturday. So, everybody will have their final medical opinion done by first part of this week. And then there's a few players, and he being one of them, that I want to see. Medical grades change just like scouting evaluations grade. One team may pass you, another team could flunk you. And it's really their experience with a particular injury and how they look at it. So there's some, my brother used to use a phrase. He goes, why they call it practice medicine? Because they haven't perfected it yet. And so, there's a difference of opinion, and 2 doctors can give you an entirely different opinion on the same guy.
Indeed. Yeah, I've seen a lot of reports about Wilson, but there are, like you are known for saying, this is the Lion season, so we don't know. But if he does drop to 9, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you've been in the draft room and you guys are asking each other, why the hell is this guy dropping? What do they know that we don't know?
His name was Aaron Rodgers.
All the way to 20. Maybe they knew he was an asshole.
No, but really, that was like, and the best answer we could come up with was there was people after that first group that really didn't spend a lot of time doing all the work on him in that pre-draft process because they just assumed he was gone. And then, Ted Thompson was running the Green Bay personnel department. Then he just said, I'm taking him. But
smart move.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let us move on now to Nolan Smith.
I'm not, I don't know if this guy is a fit for the Bears or not because he's small. And, he's like 238 pounds.
Correct.
I know what we would have done. And, Jimmy Arthur was part of our strength and conditioning crew when I was there. And, under Rusty Jones, we would have brought the guy in and had them really look at him. You measure their ankles, you measure their wrists. You try to figure out, okay, how big can he get? And can he play the position? And then they're going to come up and they say, yeah, I can get him to 252, a good 252 in 2 years. And then you say, fine. Then he's, I'll go with him. And you use him a little bit more situationally early, so you don't wear him down. But this guy, he's so damn fast, and he can use his hands. I think the 3-4 teams may covet him a little bit more because he is pretty good dropping into coverage too, so that he can be used that way. But interesting guy, really interesting guy. And a lot of it has to do with his overall athleticism. He's a freak athlete. And so, he might be able to, if you want to comp, it's the guy in Dallas, who was
Micah Parsons.
Up and down in his college career. And that's what this guy is. Is he going to be as good as Micah? Who the hell knows? But he's really an interesting guy. And Micah didn't go in the top 5. He didn't go until, 11 or 12 or something like that?
I think it was 12, yeah.
Yeah, but a real interesting guy. In fact, he's a guy that if you did do that, if that trade, say the Pittsburgh trade came up, and, he could be one of the edge guys staring you in the face. And then you make a decision. And, the guy's a good player.
He is. Another good player is Miles Murphy from Clemson. What are your thoughts?
I like Murphy. I don't love Murphy. I think he'd be the next guy in this group. The only reason I'm not higher on it, because when you look at his workout, you say, well, how come his production isn't as good as the workout? And it's like the kid who went number 1 overall last year to Jacksonville. Great workout, but where's the production? That guy only had 2 sacks for Jacksonville this year. This guy had 5.5 or 6 this year for Clemson. Now, they do play in a rotation. I just don't see the sack production that you'd want from a guy that has that kind of athleticism. Well, I'll say one thing. He plays the run really, really well. And he's got a good motor. He plays to that hits criteria. He's got to use his hands a little better, develop his pass rush technique. But he's got a ton of upside because of that athleticism, because of his motor. I just think as a pass rusher, he's still a little bit raw. If he was a better pass rusher, he might be up a slot or 2.
Can
but a
you
good player,
see,
and another guy that would be a trade down candidate, not a guy you don't think about him at 9.
right? Can you see him lasting to late in the first round? Is that possible? A guy that athletically gifted playing such a premier position?
It wouldn't shock me. I think the high side for him is probably in that 15 area. Okay, and then it keep going back. It's how different people look at him. And then you look at the kid at Jacksonville last year, and he had no production, 2 sacks, and and first pick in the draft.
Yeah.
So, but this guy, in my opinion, is better than him. So if he's better, why isn't he the first pick in the draft? I guess.
Right.
But you know, he's a good football player, and he comes from a good program. So, and he plays hard. So, you know, I don't want to over evaluate and take away from because he's got the tools that you need to be good.
All right, let's take a look at three of your favorite cornerbacks, starting with Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's an outside chance. Corner is a premium position for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
There could be one or two already off the board before they pick at 9, or they might be staring at the best guy. And they may have, and who knows, you know, we don't know what their board looks like. And this, you know, one of these guys could very well be, you know, the highest graded player. So Gonzalez, he's tall, he's long, he's very fast, got great cover skills, be it man or zone or playing man off. He'll support the run. He's got all the tools you need. I got him as my number one corner. Now, there's a difference of opinion as far as, you know, with people as far as number 2. Some people have Devin Witherspoon from Illinois. Other people like Joey Porter. Personally, I got Porter, and I'm not taking anything away from Devin Witherspoon because I think he's really, really good. But Porter is bigger. He's longer. He's faster, and I think he's more physical. And I think just the way he plays press man would fit into this scheme a little bit better. But Devin Witherspoon had a great year. And for a guy that's not big, he's 182 pounds, 183 pounds. You know, he'll come up and hit you. But he's just, you know, when you see him having to take on blocks and stuff, is he going to, at 182 pounds, is he going to wear down a little bit? And so that's why, you know, you can flip a coin. Excuse me. I'd rather have Porter over this guy, but I wouldn't be upset if I had to take this guy. Good football player. You got mute on, Aldo. There you go.
That's three slaps.
I know. You know, I'm going to have to fire you and get another producer. Jesus.
You got a lot of people volunteering already. All right, let's get to some questions. Danger T asks, how many blue chip players are there in this draft? Also, do you think Justin Fields will be a blue chip player eventually?
Well, I think he was a blue chip player and he was coming out. You know, it's a good question because you're projecting them. When you say blue, you're projecting them to be blue.
Right.
They aren't really blue. And how many are in this draft? That's a matter of opinion. Mm-hmm. And so I think Ryan said at one time it's like 7 blues he saw in this draft. I don't remember the exact number, might be 7 or 8, something like that. 6 or 7. Somebody else might say 3.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so who knows? It's the important thing is, do they fit what you're asking them to do? Or can they do what you're asking them to do within your scheme? And then are they going to have the football character that helps them live up to the natural talent? So like that's the question with Jalen Carter. Does the football character match the talent? And, you know, when I first came here, we did a study and looked at it very, very closely going back. Most guys that bust don't bust because, you know, high picks. Don't bust because of lack of talent. They bust because of lack of football character. And football character has nothing to do with personal character. So, you know, Lawrence Taylor, personal character sucked, but his football character was off the charts. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the game was very, very important to him. So I think that's the question with Jalen Carter and what all those teams that I think 8 of the 10 teams in the top 10 have brought him in, or he's going to 2 more this week, and then today and tomorrow, or today and Wednesday, and it'll have been to 8 of the 10, and that's what they got to answer.
Okay. Next question from Sam. He says, "What do you think about defensive end Isaiah McGuire from Missouri?"
Like him a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Really do. The more you watch, the more you like. I wish he ran a little faster, but he plays faster.
Mm-hmm.
And probably going to get him in the 3rd round. And the Bears' 4th round pick is the first pick in the 4th. You might even get him there. But I if he's there and my grade is such, I wouldn't hesitate to take that guy. He's going to be a good pro. I really like him. I like his length. I like his athleticism. I like the way he finishes plays. He's aggressive. He plays the run. He can rush the passer. Good football player.
Yeah, he ran a 4.76. That's not bad with a 1.59 split.
The 1.59 is good. That means he's got get off.
Right. The thing that I noticed when I saw him at the Senior Bowl is that he looked lighter than his 268 pounds. I was amazed at the combine.
Well, he's tall. So,
yeah
he's really tall and long. So,
Creighton wants to know, do you like Miles Murphy at the 3-tech position?
No, he's too small. I don't see him gaining. When I first did tape on him last summer, that's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see how big he actually is, and you look at the frame. I think he'd lose a lot in athleticism if you got him up to 285, 290.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't see it from what I've seen so far.
Right. Okay. John asks, what does Greg think of Tuli Tuipulotu at the 3-tech?
I love it. He's been one of my favorite guys, but I mean, not in the 1st round. He's the guy who hopes around in the middle to the end of the 2nd. USC had him listed at 290, and supposedly he was playing close to 290 during the year. Okay, now he goes to the combine, and he's 262 or 263 or something. So, I mean, number one, you got to do your research. And what was he really playing at during the year? Because he was damn good.
Yeah.
And he's not going to be an edge in the NFL because of his length. His arms are too short. But he's fine to play inside. I think, watching him play, and he played a lot of 5 technique at USC, I think he's a dynamite 3. I'd love him.
I did not see the details, or I'm not sure they're even out, about the Dante Pettis signing that was announced this morning. I'm sure it's just a 1-year kind of.
Yeah, it's a 1-year deal. No money has been announced. Doesn't surprise me. Some people go, "Oh, it's a waste of money." I like Dante myself.
Mm-hmm.
He is. You're not signing him to be a starter. What he does, he might be your ideal 6, 5 or 6, because he plays specials, and you got to be able. if you're 5 and 6 on the depth chart at wide receiver, you have to play specials.
Right.
He's a reliable punt returner. He can cover on kicks. He can run. He makes some plays as a receiver. You don't want him starting. He's not a starter. He's a backup. And this guy went in the 2nd round for a reason. I think. And when they signed him last year, I didn't think he was going to make the team at first. The day they signed him, I didn't think he was going to make the team. He showed a little bit last year, some stick-to-itiveness to him, and he toughened up a little, and I think the light turned on. So you might still, his best football might still be in front of him.
Yeah. I have a good friend who is friendly with Dante Pettis, and she told me that a lot of us are unaware of the fact that Pettis was injured for most of the season, and we really should be giving him credit for suiting up every time he was asked to. Uh, Now, we of course didn't know the extent of the injuries or anything, but she was basically saying this guy has got a lot of moxie, and fans should be appreciating him more as opposed to, calling him names because he muffed a punt or dropped a pass or anything.
No,
Like that.
I get it. I like him, and I remember I did him when he came out, and he was excellent punt returner at the University of Washington, and a very explosive receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a guy that can play inside at the slot, or he can play the Z. He's not really an X, but he's got decent size. He runs well. He'll block. He's got some toughness. And if he, in fact, was playing hurt, he's got a little bit more toughness than we thought. And he said, to me, he's an ideal 6. Now, are you going to bring in somebody to compete against him? I would assume so. They've brought in on their visits 3 or 4 different receivers, and they're all interesting guys, and all seem to be the same type.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that Dante Pettis can do is get separation,
Mm-hmm.
and that's important in this offense.
Indeed. All right, let's take on a few. Sam wants to know, what do you think about Darius Rush being the next Charles Tillman?
The South Carolina kid, I like
Yep.
him. He's not in that upper tier,
Mm-hmm.
but good player. Probably 3rd round type. I've said it 1,000 times. There's 12 to 15 corners go in the first 3 rounds every year, and
Mm-hmm.
that goes back 30 years now. And is he in that group? He may well be. If not, you could be looking at him at the top of the 4th. But he's a good player. He's a press man guy. They got 2 damn good corners at South Carolina, and in recent years, South Carolina's done a really good job developing corners.
Yeah, they've become a factory for corners. All right, let's see. We have Jimmy Tony saying he's surprised that we have not, in any of our previous shows, talked about Kobe Wooden. And Jimmy thinks that he could potentially be a good 3 tech. If you had a chance to study his
Yeah, I
tape?
did a little. Was it last week? Somebody brought it up. I did a little. Yeah, I think he's a down the line potential 3.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a few of those guys. There's not a lot of can't miss 3s.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you got a group, and he's one of them that you're hoping. There's another guy that I did. He wasn't at the combine. He should have been when you look at his production. Kobe Turner from Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Good football player. This guy's good football player. He played outside a lot at Auburn, but he's really big enough. There's a guy at Pitt that the Bears brought in as one of their 30 visits, did not go to the combine, played at about 275, 278. I can't think of his name right now. But another guy that, you convert because he's got that body structure that says 3 technique. And, so if they strike out on a 3 early, they very well could go to guys like this,
Mm-hmm.
in day 3 of the draft.
All right. Let's see. We got here from Bear Down Forever. Great show. I'm a huge fan. Do you think Michael Ojemedia, the Bears cornerback, can and will have a good season with the Bears?
I don't have a freaking clue. Not a player I'd really know that well. And he came in at the last game or 2 last year. And I didn't watch him where he was. And he obviously didn't succeed because he was let loose. He has got the numbers
Mm-hmm.
that say he should succeed. So what's the missing ingredient? I don't know. We'll find that out in the off-season program and once camp opens up.
Yeah, he was a third-round pick for the Denver Broncos in what year was that? 2020, and only lasted a couple seasons there. And the Bears picked him up late last season, so he's going to get his shot. You've talked before about the depth in this defensive backfield room. A lot of young players, a lot of players who could potentially improve their play this year, but that doesn't negate the fact that the Bears are going to draft a cornerback. But
no, there's a good one. Yeah, there's somebody they really like that's there. They're going to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
But in saying that, there's some guys, and some of these guys were free agents last year. UDFAs. They had to play because of injuries, and they showed up. And they're going into year 2. That difference. Just use today as an example. First day of the off-season program.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in that kid from last summer to how he would be this morning when the start of the off-season program is night and day.
Yeah.
They're scared rookies when they get here.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'm only going to speak if they talk to me, and just want to be in the background and don't want to get yelled at and don't want anybody to pick on them or anything else. And then they get through a year and they make it through a year. And all of a sudden they figure out what it's about, and they've got a confidence about them now. They know what's expected. They've practiced all year. And so now you get into year 2. Your biggest jump from players in most cases, I'm not going to say all, your biggest jump for players in most cases comes in year 2. Now in some cases it can be delayed a little bit because of scheme change or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you got to learn a new scheme, and that sets back your development a little bit. But this is year 2 in the scheme too. So, these guys, they're just going to be, they should be that much better going into this year and should show improvement. And if they don't, you're always looking for a guy to be climbing the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
And if he hits a landing in the stairway and doesn't start climbing up again, he's done. I mean, that's what you're looking for. And the last thing you want to see is fall backwards and go down the stairs. So as long as he keeps climbing the stairway, he's in good shape.
Excellent. Nomad wants to know your thoughts on Jacorian Bennett. You've talked about him before. You've got that friend over at Maryland. Share with me.
Yeah, I like him. And my buddy likes him a lot too. The other kid, Banks, now is that those people got him in the first round. I've been seeing his name for about 2 weeks going in the first round. Personally, I don't think he's a first round guy. And John Hoke coached these guys. The Bears corner coach coached them in the 20 season. Was not, and so I think that was Bennett's first year there because he was a transfer, JC transfer. Of the 2, Banks being the other guy, both John and my buddy said the same thing. This guy's more mature. Banks they're both freak athletes, but Banks is the better freak. I mean, his numbers are off. This guy's numbers are great, and Banks are off the chart. This guy does some things better. I think he's a little tougher. He can play inside and outside, where I think Banks is strictly outside. This guy can play on teams. At the right spot in the draft, I'd pull the trigger on him.
All right, a couple personal questions here. Renewable wants to know, how are you spending your draft weekend, Greg Gabriel, and which hats are you wearing while watching it?
I don't know. I'm watching. I'll be here. And I think my wife's got something to go to on either Thursday night or day 1 or day 2. She's going to be somewhere, which is good because then I can just be by myself and my dog. And but that's where I'll be here. So
All right. And then finally, Cornelius brings up, it was actually Notorious who first brought this up in the chat room and wanted to know about those spooky dolls. We talked about them last week. You said you were going to find out where they're
Yeah,
from.
I asked her this morning.
Okay.
I didn't get the right answer. No. She goes, I thought they were different. And, when I kept looking, I go, maybe they're supposed, my wife's in fashion. So I thought, oh, maybe they're supposed to be mannequin dolls or something like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She goes, I just thought they were interesting. And I said, my neighbor down the street watches this. The guy who lives in Vegas now. He took a screenshot of that and he goes, I've been in your house 100 times and never noticed those. What the fuck are they? And then, and so I told Robin that, and then she said, well, we can move them if you want. I go, no, they're fine with me. I go, they're different. What can I say?
Mr. Shorty says that they are art dolls that are used.
They are. She goes, they are art. It is a piece of art. And you've been in my house. There's a lot of art in this house. My wife is a art fanatic.
It's a beautiful home. Yes, indeed. In many ways, including that big, beautiful dog, Bennett. Is he in the room with you?
Yeah, he's right under my feet here.
If you say speak, will he bark at us?
No. No, he's sleeping. But if somebody goes by outside and he hears it, he'll speak.
All right, we got a lot of great programming this week. The best way to stay on top of it is subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get alerts on your device every time we go live, and also subscribe to our audio podcast that you can find on iTunes, Spotify, you name it. Just search for Barroom Network. For Greg Gabriel, I'm Aldo Gandia.
Hang on, Aldo. I want to talk to you just for a second.
You got it. We will see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.